Welcome to BBB Sharing. I'm here with Latasha Copney with Genesis Driving Academy. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you today,
I'm
Nicole?
doing well. So, how has customers been able to verify your driving school and properly licensed in order to do the driving academy?
Well, of course, the BBB is one way that they can, see that I'm certified. I've been, here in, Virginia doing business for a while. So, the BBB accreditation that helps. I'm also going out on the DMV website and seeing that I am approved, by DMV. Checking credentials, making sure everything checks out and I'm properly licensed and, they're doing business with a legitimate company.
Absolutely. And with the Better Business Bureau, we make sure that that is a thing. So thank you for saying that. Absolutely. What sets your driving academy apart from other driving academies?
Well, I would say, Nicole, one thing for sure is being woman-owned and having, a female instructor. It is a male-dominated industry. It has been for quite some time. So, being a female instructor from that perspective, my parents that may have, young ladies and, daughters and, even females as they become adults. Sometimes they just prefer to have a female instructor versus a male. So just preference, but it's definitely something that I would say, sets me apart from some others in the area.
Absolutely. And you're right. It is more male dominant in a lot of fields. So that is amazing. And I'm glad to know that. What should parents or adults learn before choosing?
I would say do your research, starting with DMV, checking the website, making sure that, the school that, their license, your Google reviews. A lot of my parents and, clientele, they reach out to me, they say, I read your reviews on Google and they were great. And, or, they might have been referred, by a family, but just checking to make sure that the business is legitimate, even if they're not accredited by the Better Business Bureau, excuse me, they may have a profile already. So, checking that to see if there's any reviews out there. And like I said, Google reviews, that's always, one way, just checking credentials and seeing what people's experiences are like. Maybe even going out on the website, there might be reviews, on that, that company's website. And then looking on their website too, just for like, basic information, what they offer, the hours, what serve, areas they serve. I would say starting with that.
So when you have a new teen ready to get their license, what does the process look like for them and the parents?
Ooh. So it is quite a journey. It takes some time. The process starting for a teenager here in Virginia, they are starting with either getting their permit first. They don't have to have their permit to sign up for driver's ed, at least through Genesis Driving Academy. I know a lot of the school districts, they do require them to have their permit before they can get into driver's ed. However, like I said, they can start with driver's ed with me and, they can, kind of as they're going through that process, they can get their permit at any time. Once they have their permit, though, typically what I see is they get their permit, they at that point they sign up for the classroom portion of driver's ed if they haven't already completed that, and then from there they are going to be getting their practice and their hours, and this is where the fun comes in. Getting their hours, they have to have 45 hours of guided driving practice. That's the minimum with a parent or legal guardian, and 15 of those hours have to be after sunset, so at night. That could be a little challenging in the summer months when we have more daylight time, but this time of year, weather permitting, of course. These last couple of days and weeks haven't been that favorable for it, but yeah, when we can get the nighttime driving in, it is easier this time of year. And from there, once they get their hours complete, then we sign up for behind the wheel lessons. That's usually the last step to get licensed. As a teenager here in Virginia, we have 7 lessons. So you have 7 observation periods where you observe another student driving, and then you have 7 periods where you would drive yourself. I try to get it to where they're doing it in the same day, so they don't have extra days just for one or the other, if that makes sense. But from that point, once they get those 7 observations and 7 driving periods completed, And they're skilled enough, of course, to pass the road test. Most of my teenagers is not an issue for them at that point because they've gotten the 45 hours of guided driving practice with mom or dad. So, and that's one misconception I always discuss and talk about to elaborate a little bit more on because some parents, they, in their mind and theory, it's they get their permit. Okay, we're going to sign you up for driving lessons. You know what I mean? And I do offer those lessons, private lessons, but those are optional and those will be in addition to the behind the wheel lessons that they would have at the end of the process. It's just the kind of little last refining, if you will, to make sure that they're skilled and proficient enough in all the areas and that they can pass the road test. Granted, they passed that road test on the seventh lesson or the seventh driving period, they would get their temporary license. And that pretty much completes the process. At that point, they're just waiting for either their license to come in the mail or they would be going before the judge, going to juvenile domestic relations or whatever county or city they reside in to receive their permanent license during a licensing ceremony.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is for a teenager or an adult.
Yes, it's quite a bit of steps in the process. I always tell parents you have 9 months for that. That's another requirement I forgot to mention. Each teenager would have to hold their permit for the 9 months as well before they're actually eligible, quote unquote, for their driver's license. But I do have some teenagers that get all their requirements met before that 9 month period is up. And so they can take the behind the wheel at any point once they've gotten classroom portion, permit, and the guided driver practice done with their parent. But again, their license, permanent license, or excuse me, their temporary license, it would just be valid, effective from 9 months from whenever they got their permit, whatever that is.
Wow,
Yeah.
awesome. And if you could speak directly to a new driver, what would you say?
I would say, oh, so many things. It is definitely not a sprint, it's a marathon. Go easy on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody, the hardest part is starting. You know what I mean? We can, tend to be our own worst critics. That's a common saying, right? But we're gonna make mistakes. But just be patient. Be patient with yourself. Definitely have patience when you're out on the road. And I would say if one word of advice and what I always tell my students when they're finishing, and everybody's giddy and excited, and we're doing the paperwork for your temporary license. I said, all right, now here comes the hard part. You've done your part on, the steps of getting licensed, but now that you're out on the road and you're going to soon be on the road by yourself, you have to remember that you're not just driving for yourself, you're driving for everyone else that's out on the road. So I would say that last nugget is the biggest one. But yeah, just be patient because it's the process and trust the process.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And trust yourself.
Yes.
And I agree, we are, or we can be our own worst critics. Nothing that anyone else can say is worse than what we say to ourselves.
Correct.
So getting their license, I'm sure, is a huge step. They're excited to do it because they want to be that independent person that they know that they can be, but patience is key.
Definitely. Patience is a virtue.
Is there anything else? How can consumers, whether it be parent or teen, reach out to you?
Sure. So you can go out on the website, genesisdrivingacademy.com. I'm on platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Genesis Driving Academy. And you can reach me via phone. Calling, I always get back to clients, but leaving a message because a lot of times I am on the road or I might be, instructing in the classroom. So reaching out to me, 804-442-7967, leaving a message. And also if you go out on the website, you can go online to submit a request or schedule an appointment to have a one-on-one 15-minute call. Kind of, if you have questions about the process, you're ready for behind the wheel and you want to get that scheduled, I do have it set up now so where you can go in and I can intentionally have that time set aside for you. I won't be distracted. You'll have my full undivided attention for at least 15 minutes, to discuss whatever, it is that you're inquiring about.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Like, subscribe, and join BBB Sharing. All of Genesis Driving Academy's information will be at the bottom of this. And again, thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been a pleasure.